This is huge for the Chicago Bulls. We're going to be talking about 3 questions that the front office must answer as they continue to rebuild and retool the Chicago Bulls moving forward. This is your host, Rico Greenhowe, and you found yourself on another episode of Bulls Digest. And today we are breaking down an article from Yardbarker, and it has 3 questions surrounding the Chicago Bulls as they get ready to start the season. I think that these 3 questions are going to be critical as the Chicago Bulls continue to get their direction around their youth movement and how they want to build up this team. And so this is the article, 3 questions facing the Chicago Bulls ahead of the 24-25 season. And the first question they have is, can Lonzo Ball make an impact? All right, so after missing 2 years of playing time, they talk about his passing ability and his ability to go ahead and defend as well. And I think that this is critical for the Chicago Bulls because it is clear that the Chicago Bulls do have a lot of guards at this point. And so Lonzo Ball certainly is going to add to that mass amount of guards that we have. And we have to ask ourselves this: is Lonzo Ball going to be a part of the future? And if he is going to be a part of the future, then who are we going to move on from at some point? Because the clear path is that we need to get some more frontline help. We need to get some more centers, some power forwards, maybe even a wing player over here. And so with that being said, look, if Lonzo Ball comes back and he is the player that he was 2 years ago, I would have to say that the Chicago Bulls would say to themselves, okay, does anybody want him? Because I think that there's a lot of teams out there that would love to have Lonzo Ball and his services, especially if you feel like he is the player that can push you over the top. If he's a player that can push you over the top, I think that a contender is going to want to come in, swoop him, grab him for 50 games or 60, whenever they really go ahead and find out, okay, does he look the same? It may take them 20 games to see that. It may take them half the season to see that until they say, okay, yes, we do want to go ahead and trade for Lonzo Ball. And so if that's the case, the Chicago Bulls cannot hold on to the asset. I think that they do go ahead and make a trade to where now, if you do get some draft capital, you can go out there, you can get you another center, you can get a power forward, a wing player, you can get something that you need in the draft, or perhaps you might be able to get a player back that does fit your current timeline. And so with the flip side of that, if Lonzo Ball doesn't play well, then this just means that the Chicago Bulls more than likely are just going to eat the contract. He's only on a year deal. It's about $21 million at this point in time. And I think that, hey, clearly, you have him on a minutes restriction. There's been nothing said that he's going to be on a minutes restriction, but I think that, maybe you just go ahead, you showcase him enough, but you make sure he's not in the way of Ayo, who may be having to come off the bench, Modest, Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, any of those players that are going to be in your immediate future. Then you need to make sure that you give them as much playing time as possible. And, you hope that Lonzo is able to continue to get his health. He's able to continue to show that he can continue his NBA career at some point with another team, but you cannot let him stay there and just take up minutes to some of these younger players. And so I think that there's 2 different sides to that. Yes, if he does play well, then I think you have to explore possibly moving on because I think teams are going to be interested. And if he doesn't play well, then you're just going to have to eat the contract, continue to, get him well, continue to help him, regain his NBA career, but you can also play other players ahead of him, and he's not in the way that way. And so next up, another question that they have surrounds Vooch and his situation. It is, will Vooch finish the season with the Bulls? All right, and so look, I think between Lonzo Ball and between Vooch, Javon Carter, and then Torrey Craig, and then Zach Lavine, I think that between Vooch and Lonzo, those 2 players are the 2 players that I would expect moved this year. Like with Lavine, I think the whole contract situation, the health scare, I think a lot of teams still want to see what is going on there. Javon Carter didn't necessarily play well at all last year, and so I think maybe some teams might be a little hesitant to pick that particular player in a trade. And then with Torrey Craig, He might be movable soon too with Lonzo and Vooch because of the contract situation. I mean, it's only a 1 year at $2.8 million, so I could see people going ahead taking a chance on that. Lonzo, again, I just talked about the 1 year deal, and Vooch, he has 2 years at $20 million, so it's not a whole bunch of years left. You do see that he is still getting 18 and 10, but he is declining now. You have to ask yourself, is Vooch a missing piece for you? And if the Chicago Bulls are going to move on from Vooch, it would signify that they're going with Jalen Smith. And it also means that they're going to have to elevate Sanogo and also to Kenny Lofton Jr. Those players are going to be now in the rotation for sure. And so you have to ask yourself and be smart. If you do move on from Vooch, are you bringing back a player that fits your timeline? Is it a Jackson Hayes? Is it a Robert Smith or Robert Williams III? Excuse me. Is it a DeAndre Ayton? These are players that I've talked about that the Chicago Bulls could possibly go ahead and look at in a trade. And so, what are you bringing back for this particular deal? Because you don't want to just make any deal, especially if it's not something that is going to help your franchise and set you up for the long term. So that would be my biggest concern with moving on from Vooch. Just make sure it is something that is going to set your franchise in the right direction in how you continue to build your roster up. Lastly, they talk about Coby White, and they talk about, will he build on last season? So I think he is going to build on last season, 19.2 points a game, 5.1 assists, and 4.5 rebounds a game. But more importantly, you see that he led in clutch assist, and also too, he was the 12th best scorer in clutch moments. I love everything that he's been talking about over the summer and wanting to take a real leadership role. I love that. I've talked about the fact that between Coby White and Ayo, those two players, and I would throw him in there in that question, like those two players are players that I absolutely want to see them take the leap. And I would have to think that if the Chicago Bulls are serious about trying to rebuild, retool, whatever it is, then yes, you have to think that Coby White, Ayo, those two are going to be focus points for you this year. You want to continue to build with them. I don't think that they necessarily have to prove themselves more. It's going to be a great thing when they do, but I think that pressure to go out there and prove themselves more, I think that they've shown enough to me that they are building block pieces, and I guarantee you they're going to take off again this year. And so I think that, yes, that is a huge question mark for the Chicago Bulls, because if you don't believe in Coby White and you don't believe in Ayo, then you need to go ahead and trade them. And I've said this before, you don't trade them because there's just too much out there that is shown that they're good players. Because regardless of how you look at it or not, when you look at the last couple draft classes that we've had, Coby White and Ayo, they've been hits. Those are players that you bring them in, they've been successful, and I guarantee you, if you were to put them on the trade block, most teams in the league, if not all, would say, how do we get Coby White? How do we get Ayo, right? Like, I think that is how good that these two players have been. So you absolutely want to see if they can continue to leap, because that's going to show you what other pieces that you need to bring in. Like, does it make sense now to go out there and get a guy like a Brandon Ingram who's on an expiring contract to go along with them? Because it's like, okay, from a timeline standpoint, he goes along with them, it matches. Or, does it make sense to go ahead and say, all right, I kind of think that Coby White is going to be a franchise player and we should build accordingly. Like, you have to figure out just how good he is and then build accordingly, right? You don't want to go out there and build not correctly, right? Because we took a chance with Zach Lavine and we built around him as if he was a franchise player, and then you see what the results are at this point. So you want to make sure that you're certain with what you have as a player. And so I think that those are appropriate questions for the Chicago Bulls, especially if they're looking to go and continue on this rebuild, retool, redirection. So let me know, is it going to be Vooch who is the biggest question mark for the Chicago Bulls moving forward with what they're doing? Is it Lonzo Ball and his situation? Does that help us figure out our guard situation? And is it Coby White? Is it Ayo, right? Does that give us a little bit more clearer picture as to how we want to bring in other players around them and how we're going to build this team in the future? Let me know in the comments what you're thinking. Just want to thank everybody out there for liking, subscribing, sharing. I definitely appreciate that. And let you know that 65.8% of you that watch the videos are not subscribed to the channel. So make sure you continue to throw it off the glass and slam dunk on that subscribe button for me as we try to reach 5,000 subscribers before the NBA season starts. I think we are down to about 14 days until training camp. Super excited. And even though we are talking about questions still surrounding the Chicago Bulls that we shouldn't have to be talking about, I'm still saying go Bulls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.